Hi class, welcome back to Organization and Management. So we're still under Chapter 6, Leading. So for this chapter, we already discussed Lesson 1, Motivation, and Lesson 2, Leadership Theories. So we're going to discuss now the Lesson 3, Communication. Lesson 3, Communication. So, communication applies to all management functions from planning, organizing, staffing, leading, and then controlling. So, under leading, it also applies. So, its general purpose for the organization is to bring positive changes that influence activities leading to the firm's welfare. So, let's discuss more about communication. So, the communication process starts with the sender who has an idea or a message which is then transmitted to a selected channel to the receiver. So, who in turn must be ready for the reception of the message so that it could be decoded into thoughts. So, accurate communication occurs when the sender and the receiver understand one another according to Hobbes and Coulter. So, these types or the types of communication may be verbal or non-verbal. So verbal meaning you can use oral or written words, and then non-verbal you can use through body movements, gestures, facial expressions, eye contact, and by touching. So, communication can also be classified as formal if the communication takes place within prescribed routine organizational work arrangements, or it can be informal if communication is not defined by an organization's hierarchical structure. So this communication is formal when the manager gives an assignment to a subordinate, and informal when employees talk to their friends in the office about a weekend party or a vacation which they plan to take. So for today, we're also going to discuss the direction and flow of communication. So communication flows in different directions within an organization. So it can be vertical, upward, downward, horizontal or lateral, or diagonal. So we're going to discuss what are the differences between this um, flow of communication. First one, we have vertical communication. So it involves communication flow between people belonging to different organizational levels. So, ibig sabihin, dito sa vertical communication, so yung communication where information or messages flows within the top level of the organizational structure and bottom level of the organizational structure. So, kaya yung parang flow or communication flow ay from the different organizational levels. Next is upward communication. So, the flow of information from an employee who belongs to a lower hierarchical level to the boss or manager who belongs to a higher hierarchical level. So, meaning under upward communication, the employees or subordinates, so as you can see in the picture, may communicate upward regarding their personal problems, requests that they would like the boss or managers to approve issues with coworkers and others. So, meaning they can easily communicate upward from the employee to the manager. Next is downward communication. So the flow of information from the manager who belongs to a higher hierarchical level to the subordinates or employees who belong to lower hierarchical levels. So example are when the boss gives orders to subordinates to finish a certain task, or communicates organizational policies and practices, and comments about work performance, among others. So, meaning lang dito, yung communication or your information will be coming from the manager and then to the employees. Horizontal or lateral communication. So this takes place among employees belonging to the same hierarchical level. So members of cross-functional teams who belong to different units or departments but occupy the same organizational level make use of this type of communication in order to save time and facilitate coordination. So like for example, as you can see in the picture, the communication or information are flowing from the production manager, finance manager, marketing manager, and service manager. So they are the same in the hierarchical level. They are all managers. So they do that in order to coordinate the functions or the things being done in the organization. And as well as you can see here, the employee 1 or employee 2 from the different departments under one organization are also having their communication also for the coordination of the works under the organization. Last one is the diagonal communication. So this entails communicating with someone or others who belong to the different departments or units and different hierarchical levels. So, for example, an employee belonging to the company's financial management department communicates directly with the head of the human resource department about his personal complaint against a marketing department employee. Take note of the different departments and different organizational levels of the persons communicating with each other. So, 'di ba, ang nag-complain is from the financial management department. And then, ang kinausap niya is from another department, which is dun sa human resource department. And then, yung kinocomplain na person is coming from the marketing department. So, iba-iba sila ng organizational level and then, or iba-iba sila ng departments. So, diagonal communication is said to be beneficial because of its efficiency and speed. However, it may also cause some confusion. So, dahil nga iba-iba sila ng department or iba-iba ng organization level, so that's why it can cause some confusion. Again, those are the direction and flow of communication in an organization. So now we're done understanding the different direction and flow of communication. It is also important for us to understand what can happen during the communication inside in an organization. So, organization members may encounter various types of barriers that can alter the meaning of communications that they receive. So, for example, dun sa downward communication from manager to employees, meron nagiging barriers wherein napapalitan yung meaning ng information na for example, gustong iparating ng manager. So, that's barriers to communication. So, these barriers include filtering, emotions, information overload, defensiveness, language, and national culture. So, first one is filtering. So, it is the shaping of information communicated in order to make it look good or advantageous to the receiver. So, for example, a sales agent may report to his manager the big amount of sales that he was able to make with one of their customers, but fails to report the complaints he received from other customers regarding their products. So, meaning, si sales agent, finifilter niya or kinoconceal or yung magaganda lang yung sinasabi niya kay manager. And then sa side naman ni manager, it is really beautiful or maganda na yung naririnig or nire-report ni sales agent is yung mataas na sales, yes, but if hindi nasabi ni sales agent na marami nagrereklamo regarding their product, so it can cause some serious issues or problems within the organization. So next one is emotions. The interpretation of communications which may be influenced by extreme emotions felt by the receiver. So, for example, a manager who is in a very bad mood and receives good news may not see the positive aspect of it because his rational thinking process is affected by his emotional judgment. So, ibig sabihin lang dito, humahalo yung emosyon dun sa pag interpret mo nung information na nakukuha mo through the communications. So, ibig sabihin dito, parang yung hindi na siya clear or hindi na siya um, information lang which is naghumahalo na yung emotions mo. So it is one of the things na iniiwasan in an organization kasi syempre it can cause serious problems or issues within the organization. So as a professional, we are bound to limit or control our emotions. Next one is information overload. So it is another barrier to good communication since there are too many pieces of information received by an individual may have a negative effect on a person's processing capacity. So, 'di ba, like a student, if there are too many things to understand or there are too many concepts, so nasasabi natin yung information overload. So, 'di ba, each one of us or each individuals, meron na silang processing capacity na yun lang yung kayang i-process na information ng utak nila. So, if it is being too much, so doon na nangyayari yung information overload. So, for example, the hundreds of job applicants received by human resource managers through email may be too many for them to read fully and respond to accurately. So, ibig sabihin, dito naman sa side ni human resource managers, sobra-sobrang information through the job applications yung nare-receive niya. So, that is beyond his or her processing capacity. So, kaya ang nangyayari since there are too many information or information overload, hindi niya na mababasa ng maayos lahat ng applications and hindi na din sila makakapag-respond accurately. So next one is defensiveness. So this is the act of self-protection when people are threatened by something or someone. So due to this feeling, people may resort to communicating lies in order to protect themselves or to interpret communications differently to defend their interest. So thus reducing mutual understanding. So dito sa defensiveness, in order for you, for example, to protect yourself, nagkakaroon ka na ng communication lies or yung nasasabi mo na is information na mali. So, ang nangyayari is, dinedefend mo, for example, yung sarili mo, yun nga, yung self-protection, and at the same time, nagkakaroon ng commotion within the organization or dun sa mga members ng organization, kasi nga, parang nagsispread ka ng lies. And at the same time, bumababa yung mutual understanding mo within the employees or the members of the organization. So, for example naman, if yung coworker mo, so siya yung nagiging defensive or sine-self-protect niya yung sarili niya, 'di ba? Parang magkakaroon ka ng ilang or parang magkakaroon kayo ng something na parang hindi maganda. So, kunyari ikaw, tas ganun yung pinapakita niya sa'yo. So, parang hindi kayo mas magkakaintindihan if he or she is always doing that or being defensive of the things that he or she have done. So that's one barrier to communication. So next one is language. So it could also hamper good communications because words used may have different meanings to different people belonging to different age, educational background, or cultural group. So the diversity of background of organization members may influence the language or the words that they use. So 'di ba nga in an organization it can really be a diverse organization wherein iba-iba or iba-iba ng upbringing or iba-iba ng culture and then iba-iba ng language yung mga tao sa iisang organization. So like for example, the word hello may just be an ordinary greeting to the older members of an organization, but the same word hello may have a negative connotation to the younger group of the employees or of employees depending on the context. So, ibig sabihin, parang nagkakaroon ng language barrier within the organization. Wherein, iba yung, for example, iba yung perception ng gantong group sa organization dun sa, sa isa pang group sa organization. So, the last barrier to communication is the national culture. So, just like language, the prevailing national culture may also cause problems in communication among members of an organization, especially if it is multinational company. So, kasi kapag multinational companies, so ibig sabihin, iba't iba talaga ng nationalities yung employees or yung members ng organization. So, certain office practices like sending formal memoranda to employees may be negatively interpreted by employees coming from another country with a different culture that values face-to-face interpersonal communication. So, ibig sabihin nun, for that organization, normal lang yung pagpapadala nung memoranda sa employees. But since, for example, another employee is coming from a different culture or yung culture niya nga is mas okay yung face-to-face for communication, so matitake niya into negatively yung pagpapadala ng formal memoranda. So, that negative interpretation may, in turn, cause employee dissatisfaction and less motivation to perform their work well. So, also, minsan, di ba, merong mga punto or merong mga tone ng voice na iba-iba per nationality, di ba? So, kung ano yung normal, for example, in this nationality or this group of people, can be iba yung dating to some certain people or some certain group of people. So, parang dahil doon, nagkakaroon ng promotion or yun nga, employee dissatisfaction and it can also lead to demotivation. So, our main goal here is how can we overcome these communication barriers? So, to avoid conflicts resulting from communication problems, managers try to overcome communication barriers through the following. So, we have using feedback, using simple language, controlling emotions, active listening, and observing body language. So, first one is using feedback. This is usually done by asking questions about a memo sent to subordinates or by asking them to give their comments or suggestions. So, in doing so, they are able to determine whether the communication they sent out was understood the way they originally intended. So, ibig sabihin, through that feedback, malalaman nila kung naparating ba nila ng maayos yung message talaga na gusto nilang sabihin and hindi siya na misinterpret nung naka-receive nung memo or nung message. So next one is using simple language. So this is done by avoiding uncommon terms and flowery words that may just cause misinterpretation. Language use must fit the level of understanding of the intended recipients of the communication. So ibig sabihin, effective communication is achieved when the message is understood by those who received it. So, ginagawa or pwede mong gawing simple na lang yung language since or kung ano man yung language na kung saan mas maiintindihan ng nakakarami or nung intended recipients mo. Kasi for example, ang gusto mong um, makaintindi nung memo mo or nung information na sasabihin mo is yung mga hindi masyadong sanay mag-English. So, if you use flowery words or yung mga uncommon terms, so, merong chance or there is really a high chance na hindi nila maintindihan yung sinasabi or ma-misinterpret nila yung meaning nung sinasabi mo. So, kapag sinimplihan mo lang yung language kung saan mas maintindihan nila, and di mas magiging maayos yung communication or yung information na masasabi mo. And um, maiiwasan natin yung mga communication problems. Next is active listening. This means listening well in order to grasp the full meaning of the communication. So, hearing without giving full attention to what others seek to communicate usually results in misinterpretations and communication distortions. So, kapag meron nagsasalita or meron kang kausap, kailangan full yung attentions mo sa kanya. Especially, for example, employee siya na may gustong sabihin sa'yo na importante. So, kailangan full yung attention mo. Kasi, if hindi full yung attention mo or if hindi nagkakaroon ng active listening, baka ma-interpret mo yung pwedeng sinasabi ni employee. And also, at the same time, if si employee naman, hindi siya nagfo-fully attention or wala siyang full attention dun sa sinasabi ni manager, so, it can also result to communication distortions or, kunyari, may binibigay na certain task or instruction si manager and then hindi nagiging focus si employee to give his or her full attention dun sa sinasabi ni manager. So, most probably, hindi niya maayos or hindi niya magagawa ng tama yung gustong pagawa ni manager. So, it should be really or there should be really active listening. So next is controlling emotions. So this is another method of overcoming communication misinterpretation. So when the receiver is affected by the extreme anger, his interpretation of a message received may not be accurate. Or on the other hand, when the sender is affected by extreme emotions, he or she may also send or transmit inaccurate information. Therefore, it is important to practice emotional restraint or yun yung sinasabi natin as a professional, you should be or you should control your emotions, especially if you're in an organization na marami kang nakakasalamuha or maraming factors na kailangang i-consider. So last one, how to overcome communication barriers is through observing body language. So this also influences how communication is interpreted. So actions of the message receiver, like throwing away a letter delivered to him, betrays his negative feelings regarding its message, even if he says yes or okay to what is requested. Kasi 'di ba usually kapag tinrow mo yung letter na dineliver sa'yo, so, parang meron siyang negative connotation. So, if either yes or okay yung sinabi mo dun sa request, pero yung action mo naman is like that, so it can cause misinterpretations. Oh, so, nonverbal cues must always be watched because as the saying goes, actions speak louder than words. So dapat as a person or as an professional individual, you must always be mindful of your body language or yung mga non-verbal cues mo. Kasi nga, pwedeng iba yung sinasabi mo dun sa action na pinapakita mo. So, para hindi ka ma-misinterpret, so kailangan you also look out for that. So also, this is not only practiced by the subordinates or yung mga employees, but also especially the managers and the leaders, since kailangan, katulad ng mga employees is, kung ano yung sinasabi nila, yun din yung ginagawa din talaga, ginagawa nila. Kasi nga 'di ba, as a leader, um, you influence and you also motivate your employees. So parang it always starts from you. So kung ipinapakita mo na ganun ka, so most probably ma-influence din yung mga employees mo ay magiging mindful na din dun sa body language nila. So again, those are the things on how can we overcome communication barriers. So hindi lang naman siya magagamit ng mga employees and managers but also you students, pwede nyo din silang gamitin to overcome communication barriers with your teachers or with your classmates or with your parents at home or with the people na nakakasalamuhan nyo din. So, hindi lang naman nagsisimula yung isang bagay sa pagpasok sa isang organization or sa pagiging isang employee, but mas maganda ngayon pa lang, simulan nyo na din na mas magkaroon ng proper communication with the people that you are encountering with. And that's the true spirit of being a leader. And that's the end of chapter 6, leading. So again, under this chapter, we've discussed motivation, leadership theories and styles, and communication. So I hope that you've understand that leading is also one of the most important management functions, since through leading, you can inspire and influence people in the organization to achieve a common goal. So, not only the goal of the organization, but also the goal of those people under the organization. So for next week, review topics for LA is Chapter 4, Organizing from Lesson 3 to 5, and then Chapter 5, Staffing, all of the lessons under Staffing, and then Chapter 6, Leading, the Lesson 1 to Lesson 3 or the Motivation, Leadership Theories, and Communication. Again, class, if you have any questions or concerns about our discussion, feel free to message me. Thank you, class. God bless. Stay safe.